Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Everybody's Got a Podcast. This is another Florida edition podcast. How fun is that? Gonna be doing it again from Florida. Pardon the echo. I've been trying to make this work. The microphone is currently sitting in a camera tripod. My camera tripod, which, unfortunately I haven't been able to use in such a long time. But it is sitting here, and we're using it to use a microphone on, which is fun, I guess. But, it's been pretty good. I'm having a good time. Anyways, before I get into the topic of today, which is, you'll be able to read the title and you'll see, I'll just tell you a little bit about Florida, how I'm doing here, what's going on. Of course, a lot of it's been eating food. I think I always talk about the food whenever people always ask me, like, what do you miss about Florida? And it's like, I guess America in general. It's like, a lot of it's to do with the food. And yeah, I've been snacking on pizzas and burritos and tacos and chicken wings and all that fun stuff, all the terrible stuff, cookies and donuts, of course, things that you don't really get as well in Russia, or at least not the kind that I like. I like the big soft pillowy donuts, and I like soft cookies as well. And for some reason, that's hard to find in Russia. All the donuts are like those greasy, like Entenmann's donuts, and the cookies are all quite dry. Sorry, Russia, I don't like those cookies. They gotta be soft for me. So, but it's been really good though. It's been mostly sunny, which has been really nice. It's rained a lot. However, I've been able to kind of like schedule my exercise around that, which has been nice because I'm free all day. I'm not doing anything here, so I've been having just an easy time doing that. So for example, I think so far I've done 60 kilometers of bike rides. It's usually about 10 kilometers a day and knock it out in about 20 minutes. Same thing with walking. I do some walking, but it's kind of boring because there's nothing really to walk to. You'll always hear me. That's one of the big things that I love about living in Pushkin is the fact that there's just stuff to walk to all over the place. So you feel almost encouraged to walk. Here, not so much. You kind of feel almost discouraged to walk because everything's so far, and not only is everything far, but the stuff in between is just like people's houses. So it's really boring. Especially because I guess one thing I've noticed in Russia, it's like everybody's house is just kind of on the roads. The roads just kind of feel all interconnected, where it's like in America, it's like you get the main roads and then you've got neighborhood roads. And all the houses are facing away from the main roads and facing the neighborhood roads. So you just walk past like the backs of people's houses and it's just like, not a big fan. But today is a wonderfully sunny day. I didn't walk. I went for a bike ride today. And then I came home. I went swimming. I made a smoothie. I'm going to go for a nice big hour and a half, 2 hour walk later. Because I've got loads of free time, may as well exercise a bunch. And so, just knock all that fun stuff out. Stay a little bit healthy while I'm eating loads and loads of calories, which I'm, trying to combat. But we'll see how that goes. I didn't weigh myself before all this, and I'm certainly not going to weigh myself after this because I'm certain it's going to be bad news. Forget about it, Just try to exercise as much as we can, keep up the cardiovascular fitness, and then back to the running once we get back to Russia. So, yeah. Oh, well, let me go ahead and crack this open. Let's see if you can guess what that is. It's not a soda. It's sparkling water, sparkling mineral water, San Pellegrino. Big fan of that. Very tasty, very tasty. So, anyways, got to get all nice and hydrated for today's topic. So, today's topic is going to be about learning a language. Of course, that's usually what I talk about when I'm doing solo podcasts, just because, that's what I know about. That's what I do. That's what I teach. And that's what makes it easy for me to talk about it because, I've got I don't know how many thousands of hours standing in front of students telling them about stuff, but I've got loads of it because I do about 30 hours a week, maybe 25 hours of standing in front of students a week, and I've been doing that now for 5 years. If you do the math on that, I think it's something around 5,000 hours. I'm not entirely sure, but I've got plenty enough. So, as you can read about the title of the episode, this episode is going to be about, do you really need to learn a second language? Now, I'm going to start off by answering that question just straight out with one answer. So, do you really need to learn a second language? No, you don't. You don't have to. However, you can because it's fun. I wouldn't. Okay. So let me go back. It matters on what your first language is, because if your first language is English, then the answer is no. If your first language is not English, then the answer is maybe. Depends on where you're from, what you do, how you want to live your life, and all those different things. So you just have to think about, well, I mean, obviously, you know your first language. I don't need to tell you what your first language is. You know it. So, for example, let's say if your first language is something like Finnish, obviously it's going to be a bit harder to, well, conduct international business in Finnish, because there's only a few million Finnish speakers in the world, and, you're really limiting yourself. And if you learn English, that opens yourself up to billions of people, because not only do hundreds of millions speak English as a first language, but billions of people speak it as a second language, because it's kind of like the world's second language, and that's probably how it will continue to be for the foreseeable future. Because people always say, oh, maybe Mandarin Chinese will come about in the future, and that'll be the world's second language because China's growing. But I disagree. Maybe that's a topic for another episode. I disagree because, one, everybody's already learned English. I don't think people are going to want to learn another language. And two, like, Mandarin Chinese is remarkably harder compared to English. And I think in my experience teaching, I think if the difficulty of English puts some people off, the difficulty of Mandarin Chinese would definitely put people off. Anyways, let's get into the benefits of this stuff. So, the benefits of this stuff, now the main one, as a teacher, of course, I always have to tell students that the main benefit of learning English is opening your mind to the culture of the world. And of course, that is true, but if that doesn't fail, I tell them about the money. Because the money, of course, is a huge benefit of learning a second language, right? Because, so I did some cursory research. I didn't do a whole lot of it, but, I looked up just a few numbers on it, and it seems the consensus is that if you learn a second language, then on average, you will earn about 5 to 20% more per hour compared to non-bilingual people. Now, this isn't just necessarily learning a second language, this is just being bilingual in general, because, if you're born with it, then you're lucky, you kind of lucked out in that aspect. But, if you've learned it, then definitely. And it definitely depends on, as well, like, as I said, the size of your country, like, if you're in a country where you can't make much money simply in your country, but you go international, you can make a lot of money, then of course English will be a massive benefit for you money-wise. Now, for me, obviously, learning a second language, me being a native English speaker, it doesn't help me that much. For native English speakers, it's a different argument, which I will get into a little bit later when I talk about non-tangible benefits of learning English, or not necessarily learning English, but learning a second language. So we'll get back to the money for a second. So, of course, now going off of what my students tell me is that if you learn English in Russia, there's a huge opportunity to get a better job, because a lot of these companies are working internationally, as I said earlier, and therefore you're going to be making a lot more money. I think for some of them, they've told me it's twice as much. You could be earning twice as much, maybe 3 times as much, because, if you can imagine, let's say, and this isn't even leaving the country, this is in the country, like a lot of, let's say it was like some engineering jobs in Russia, it was like 50,000 rubles a month, but if you knew English, then you could find some jobs with different companies, international-based companies, that would pay you 100,000 rubles a month. And you would just still be working in Russia at a Russian building, in a Russian building, doing stuff in Russian, just occasionally speaking English with your clients and things like that. So, it's like the monetary benefits are there. And, even I guess with native speakers of English, like, learning a second language still is a skill you can put on your resume. And I think any good recruiter would look at someone who knows a second language unnecessarily. And if I were hiring, I would think, oh, that person has commitment to things that aren't super important. So imagine if it's really important, then they'll definitely be committed. So I think, I don't know, it just shows commitment, I think, to learning a language. Because learning a language takes a long time. For me, it's like, if somebody knows a language, I feel like, to me, that's like they're a fitness athlete, because it's kind of the same thing. It takes slow, steady practice over many years to be perfect at it, and kind of the same. So, anyways, The other benefits, of course, are communication. Now, one thing I was thinking about as I was traveling back to America is that everything was in English. If it wasn't in the native language of the country, it was in English. And, we were on the flight and they were doing the safety instructions we were going from St. Petersburg to Helsinki. Now, they did a few things in Russian, but it was mostly a Finnish crew. So they would do it in Finnish first and then they would do it in English. And I was thinking, like, man, if you don't know either of those languages, you're just not going to get it. It's for your own safety to know English at that point. Same thing, you go to the airport, you go there and they know Finnish and they know English. And, of course, maybe something like Swedish or something like that as well. But you're not learning that. You're probably learning English. And so, therefore, there's just, like, it just opens up the world. A lot of people think that, oh, I want to learn English for traveling because they want to, talk to some cool people at the bar and they want to make friends and things like that. But really, it's just also like going to the airport and talking to staff at places and making sure everything's okay. If your room has a problem and you don't know English and you don't know, let's say, Spanish, you're in Spain, and you don't know Spanish, you don't know English, and there's a problem with your room, how are you going to communicate to them? Of course, you could use Google Translate, but, at that point, you're trusting that Google is giving you a good enough translation. And we all know that Google Translate can be a bit iffy occasionally. So I wouldn't rely on it. Plus, it's just kind of fun. To me, it's kind of like unlocking a secret. It's like learning how to play a song on the guitar. It's like once you get to the end of it, once you're able to do the new thing, you kind of like, man, that's cool. I feel cool for being able to do that. I learned it, now I can do it. So it's really cool. Okay. So let's get into some non-tangible benefits. Now, as I said, it opens, the communication part, and we're going to stem from that, because it opens your world a bit more. Even if you don't necessarily travel to the country, it does open your eyes to the culture of those places where you learn it, because like it or not, the books that you're going to be using to study your language are going to have culture from the countries of, places that speak that language. Now, if you're speaking English, it's going to be a lot of British stuff and American stuff, but I know my books, they will talk about South Africa, Ireland, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, all different English-speaking places, and you get to learn just a little bit of culture of here and there, and you kind of learn some stuff. English, of course, being very international, you'll find like any big Hollywood movie is going to be in English, any big video game is going to be in English, any major pop song is probably going to be in English from like the top 40s or, if you listen to that stuff. Obviously, it's going to be in English because it comes from an English-speaking country. Now, same thing. If you learn French, it's going to tell you all about France. You may learn a bit about Montreal. You may learn a bit about a few of the African countries that speak French, or some of the island countries that speak French. And you just get a very big... Belgium, they speak a bit of French there. Switzerland. Okay, I'm done naming French-speaking countries. Not just going to list all my favorite countries that speak specific languages. But, I mean, like, as I said, going back to the stuff, you're just going to learn about that stuff. It's going to come to you because you're going to be forced to interact with it. And you'll just learn about things that you just never would come across in your daily life. And it gives you a bit of appreciation for those things when you see it in the news. For example, you learn French and you learn, a bit about France. You learn about Bastille Day, and all of a sudden July rolls around and, hey, look, Bastille Day's in the news. Oh, I remember that. We studied it in my book. I remember what they did. And, well, I personally don't know too much about Bastille Day, but they do celebrate it there. I know they do the French colors. Of course, it's France. They love their flag. Anyways, there's lots of non-tangible benefits besides just opening your world a bit. Now, of course, you will get to meet new people as you travel. I've met plenty of interesting people being able to speak Russian. I have, you just communicate with people at the bar, on the street, or just anywhere. Just kind of, you occasionally run into people and they have a bit of a conversation with you, and you meet something, you learn a new fact, or you learn something interesting about them, or they tell you an interesting story. And there's just a lot to be learned from just talking to people. And I think it's also interesting. Like, you feel almost like a secret agent being able to just communicate in this language. Like, wow, I just say these words and they understand it? Like, this isn't just stuff from my textbook. They understand these words? And they do. It's because it's their language. For them, they're just speaking, But for you, it's just like, wow, it feels like I'm using a key to open up this whole part of the world that I just didn't even know existed. I remember one time it was something like, oh god, it was on Reddit, and they were talking about like what's big in your country at the moment, and someone was talking about it was some Baltic country, so it must have been. I want to say it was Croatia, and they just had this whole world of salamander memes for some reason. Just a bunch of memes about salamanders, and I have no idea why, but it was interesting. And I guess if I hadn't been looking for multicultural stuff, I wouldn't have learned about Croatian salamander memes. I hope that's correct. So you get just all these cool, interesting things that you may never have thought you'd ever encounter in your life, and they're just there, just waiting to be unlocked, waiting to be seen, just enjoying the world that you're living in. It's like they always talk about YOLO. I mean, you do only have one life, and for me, I see life as I only have one life, so I want to see as much as humanly possible. I want to see the world as much as I can and learn as much as I can about the world because, well, it's the only one I got, It's like in video games, I was always kind of wanting to travel around the map. Same thing about the world. And knowing a second language allows you to, I guess, do that because you have the opportunity, especially if you know English. Now, as I said, as a native English speaker, you won't necessarily need to learn a second language, but you can, and it could be just fun. It could just be a hobby, something to work on. Let's say, it's like you don't know what to do. It's like you don't want to learn a musical instrument, or you don't want to, do cycling or weightlifting, and you decide, hey, how about a language? People always talk about languages. Why not give it a try? Duolingo's free. We'll get into Duolingo in a bit. I like Duolingo. Okay, so now you may be thinking, okay, I want to learn a language, but I don't care about the money. I don't care about traveling. I don't care about other people. What if I want to do it for fun? Do it. Go ahead. Any reason you have to study a language, I think you should take it, because not only is it like good for being able to open your world, but it's also just kind of good for your mind. You're always just learning new things every day. You're learning some new words. It's like these little micro goals that you set for yourself every day. Learn 5 new words of the language. Even if you only remember one of them, by the next week, you still, you kind of go through stuff and you feel like you accomplish stuff every day. And I think our caveman brains really like that when we accomplish little goals throughout the day, because, I think it's just kind of how it's wired to work because it's like kind of animalistic, I guess, with animals, they don't have life goals. My cat doesn't dream about being some sort of catronaut by the end of her life. She just dreams about what does she want to do? She wants to walk around. She wants to sleep now. She wants to eat. She wants to chase something. And she had a good day, and she goes to sleep and does it again the next day. So I think our brains kind of have a similar idea in the sense that we like to just accomplish small things throughout the day. And if you're learning a language, you get to accomplish those things. You get to learn some new words. You get to learn some grammar. You get to understand the structure. And there's a lot of interesting things to find out. It's like when you find out that, like, oh, in Russian they don't actually do the same word order as us in English. I mean, they do, but you can change it around. And you go, hold on. What? In English, it's very strict. You're always doing subject, verb, object, unless you're doing passive. But you're telling me in Russian you can just change it around and it's not passive? Just for fun? Wow. Interesting, right? I think that's quite interesting. So, I don't know. To me, that's just the interesting parts of it. Maybe for you it's not interesting, and maybe you're not much of a language learner. That's okay too. Maybe you just want to pick up a few words here and there and just learn a little bit, you can do that. You can just, just say, hey, Dutch is a cool language. Let's go learn a few words of Dutch. We'll spend a week, we'll do Duolingo for 10 minutes a day for 7 days. I'll learn a few Dutch words, and that'll be it. Why not? You don't have to learn the language to the entirety. You don't have to learn the language to be able to communicate and go work in the Netherlands. You just wanted to learn a few words, and you did. Why not? A lot of people aren't filling their weeks with valuable time anyways. A lot of people are just, like myself, watching countless hours of YouTube videos or playing World of Warcraft, The Burning Crusade. I got to the Outland, by the way. I'm very happy about that. But, I mean, a lot of us aren't really filling our time with exactly the best stuff. So, or maybe your work. Maybe you've got a lot of downtime at work. You work on a computer at work, and you've got 10 minutes here and there every day, and you just feel like, I'm really bored. I don't know what to do. I can't really, play games. I can't pull up, World of Warcraft at work. What can I do? Well, you could just learn a few words here and there. Why not? And if you learn the grammar, great. If you don't, whatever. You learned a few new words. You had fun, right? And then, for example, if you learn a few French words, and one day you're at the bar, you're sitting in New York City, you're in the bar, and then some guy comes up, and him and his friends just came over from France. And you turn to him and you say, hey, I learned a few French words while I was just hanging out at work. Let me say a few French words. See if you find it funny, because they probably do. So it's just, it opens up things, right? It just unlocks these different things. And I like it because it's so, it doesn't take a lot of time to be able to learn a few things. And you might be thinking, like, now, as I said earlier, you don't have to learn a lot. And you're probably wondering, like, how much do you need to be effective at communicating? And I guess that really depends on your goal. If your goal is just to simply say, I would like a coffee, please, a big or a large, not big, like a large, cappuccino with coconut milk, no sugar, then you don't really need to learn a lot, right? You can learn that in less than a week. In a day, if you're diligent. And you could just kind of practice these things. You just kind of learn this day. Oh, I'm going to learn how to order a coffee at a coffee shop. You just think of your order and just think about how you would do it. Just maybe Google Translate it, remember the words, remember the pronunciations, and, just every day you can just learn a few phrases, or just a phrase. Even just a phrase is enough. And then by the end of it, let's say by the end of the year, if you did a phrase every single workday for, 12 months, we'll call it, 4 weeks per month, 12 months, 40. I know there's 52, but that's 52 phrases. And that's a lot of phrases to do. I mean, obviously, you're not at work at every single. So we'll say 45 new phrases a year. That's a lot. And that's just a single phrase a day. And you could probably learn the phrase in less than 5 or 10 minutes if you just sit there and just really, hammer at it, and you practice later on. Just practice. So you just kind of have to keep going. Just work on some phrases, work on some words, work on some vocabulary, talk to people, have fun with it, and you'll like it. You'll enjoy it. Now, let me talk a little bit about myself, because obviously me, Mr. Speaky Man, the man talking into the microphone right now, I learned a bit of Russian before I moved to Russia, and I actually didn't know a whole lot of Russian before I moved to Russia. I would say enough to have basic conversations. Hi, how are you? As you heard in the Russian episodes, if you look back on the feed, you'll see it you see it on all my podcast players. I don't know if YouTube has it. But if you look back through my feed, there is one called Interview со мной на русском, and that is an interview with me in Russian, and you'll hear my Russian as of that day. Whatever, maybe you're listening to this in the future. Welcome, by the way. Welcome from the future. Welcome to the past. Anyways, how much did I know? Not a lot. But when I moved here, I was forced to communicate a lot, and I was forced to learn these little phrases every day, and that's kind of how I did it. I just learned small phrases here and there every single day. And I think it really helped, because it was just... It was nice, because I had a lot of context to it. And obviously it depends on where you are, let's say, where you're learning it. If you're learning it in a classroom, if you're learning at home, obviously you're not going to have the same context as someone who went to the country and learned it. But it was the same idea. I still learn, a few phrases here and there every single day, It's like, do you want a bag? No, thank you. Can I have this? Can I get this? Or, what's the price of this? And, do grapes need to be put in bags before I buy them? Do I have to get a sticker? You just learn all these little phrases here and there. Same thing at home. If you just kind of practice those, you can practice them in your head. You can, let's say, like you go to the supermarket and you want to practice these phrases. Now, of course, obviously everything's in English in your country if you're from an English-speaking country, but, you want to practice, let's say, your French. We'll just go back to French. And so, you just think about it. You just go to the grapes. Going back to grapes. I guess I want some grapes right now. I'm wearing a purple shirt. But you go to the grapes, and you try to think in your head, how would I say that in French? How would I say that in French? And, you just kind of formulate the sentence in your head. How would I say, do grapes need to go in a bag before I buy them? I can just practice it like that, and that's kind of what I do in Russia. Even when I'm not talking to people, I just kind of, as I'm walking around, I think of these things. I just kind of, you look at a bird, and you think, oh, what kind of bird is that? It's a sparrow. How do I say sparrow in Russian? I don't know. I'll Google it. And then I remember it, hopefully. Or, you just you sit down on the train and you think, I'm on the Sapsun train. What does Sapsun mean? Oh, okay, it's a peregrine falcon. Interesting. Never going to need it, but interesting. I know it now, right? And you sit down on the train and you say, oh, I need to stand in the aisle. Don't block the aisle. How do I say aisle in Russian? You look it up and say, oh, okay, now I know it. So there's all different types of things that you all this little context of just living in the country that you can do in your own head as you do it. And you just have to manufacture these situations in your head. Obviously, it's a lot harder if you're not living in the country. So how much would you need? I would say definitely, if you plan to live in a country, I would say go ahead and do the Duolingo tree of whatever language you're trying to learn. Go ahead and do the Duolingo tree. And I would say that would be enough to get you started in the country, to be able to get your foot in the country and learn the language if you're living there. Now, if you're doing it at home, obviously, that's kind of going to be your skill cap unless you get further training. A lot of it's going to be with, let's say, hiring a teacher or making a friend or practicing it yourself, getting new books. Books are, of course, going to be better than Duolingo at the higher levels. Duolingo is great for a low level, though. So let's talk about Duolingo, though. Is Duolingo enough? Yes, it is. It is. It's perfectly fine. Duolingo is good for starting off. Now, if you're going to be going anywhere higher than A2, so there is the scale, by the way, if you don't know, it goes A1 or pre-A1, A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2. You get the idea. And pre-A1 is going to be almost no language. C2, CPE is the exam that you take with it. So C2, all right, we'll just start all that over. A2, basically nothing. C2, high-level university speech. Most people are going to fall into the category where, I would say, if you want to have a good level of conversational language, you're going to hover between B2 and C1 because those are decently high, but not terribly hard to get to. And it just takes constant good practice. Is Duolingo going to get you to B2, C1? No. But you can get books after that, because I would say if you complete the tree in Duolingo, it shows that you are dedicated and you can get to it. And the good thing about languages is that as long as you're putting in the effort, it comes because it's just a language. It's kind of math can be tricky because it's if I divide 30 by, let's say 2, you're going to get 15 every time. However, and you kind of feel division. But if I divide 37,843 by 16.5, okay, it's I know division, but I don't know that one. I like language because it's if you know present perfect continuous in English, then you know that if you put things in the structure, let's say past simple, and for example, I walk is in the present simple, and you want to put it in past simple, it's I walked, I taught. You just have to know the difference between irregular and regular, but once you know second forms, what second forms do, usually ed or irregular, and if you know those, then you can do any past simple you want, even if you come across a new word, right? Let's say you come across the word abdicate. You're I've never heard the word abdicate before, but if I want to put it in the past tense, it kind of looks like other words. So would the past tense just be abdicated? Yes, it is. Yeah, there you go, right? See, you just kind of, it's like other things in the sense there's a lot to do, but I find it's a lot more simple, intuitive, because once you get the ideas of the language, once you understand how to make these things into the forms that they need to be, there's not surprise forms. There's not going to be, you have to come up with some special way of doing it to be able to understand it, or some sort of long form, with the math problem I did earlier. It's all you have to do is just divide it. Yes, the calculator goes no problem, but you got to remember how to do it. You got to remember how, you do the kind of division with, let's say, not easy numbers, so numbers that aren't 0, 5, or 10. Or, I guess 0 is useless, but you get the idea. So is Duolingo enough? Yeah, go ahead. If you want to learn a language, start with Duolingo. Just do it. Go ahead, get started. Do 5, 10, 15 minutes every day, 20 minutes, or as much as you want to do every day, but don't get burnt out. That's my big recommendation. Don't get burnt out. If you do Duolingo, let's say, I would say, if you want a good amount, stick to 15 to 30 minutes 5 times a week. Give yourself some rest days. It's like, imagine you're doing running, right? Imagine you're going running every day, and you gotta have a few rest days, and you don't want to overdo it. It's a long thing, as I said. Learning a language is like doing fitness. It takes a lot of constant practice over a long time. So just keep at it. Have fun with Duolingo. You got it, no problem at all. So I hope this helps you learn some languages in the future, because learning language I think it's a very valuable thing. I think it's a very important thing for people to know, for people to do, because it's good for your brain, in the sense that it kind of gives you little motivational bits every day to do. It gives you these little goals, and you feel pretty good about it, if that's what you like. Or, when you successfully communicate to someone, it gives you this feeling of accomplishment. Or just simply learning new words, and you kind of open your world, and you open your horizons, right? It's like learning a new trick in skateboarding, It's like, maybe I'm not going to do a laser flip every day, but now I know how to do it. So I think language is kind of like that. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. I certainly had fun doing it, being back in my childhood room, doing a podcast, which is fun. I had a great time. I'm happy to be back in Florida for the next month or so I'll be doing the next 4 or 5 of these from here. Hope you enjoyed it. As always, please share it with your friends if you liked it. If you didn't, still share it with them and laugh at me. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure you stay safe out there until this is all over, and goodbye.